1. US-EU trade deal, Trump's tariff deadline and what's at stake. 2. US tariffs on Europe, impact on $2 trillion trade relationship. 3. Trump's tariffs deadline looms, what it means for US-EU trade relations. 1. US-EU trade deal, Trump's tariff deadline and what's at stake. Imagine a world where the rules that once governed global trade are suddenly up for grabs. That's exactly what's happening as the US and the European Union race against the clock to finalize a trade deal before President Trump's looming July 9 deadline. But here's where it gets controversial. The proposed agreement isn't about resolving deep-seated disputes, it's a temporary fix designed to delay them. The stakes? A potential 50% tariff on European goods, which could ignite a transatlantic trade war. Let's break down what's at play and why this matters for everyone from factory workers to your local electronics store. The US and EU are currently negotiating a stripped-down deal that would avoid immediate tariffs. This pact, if signed, would be one of several Trump aims to finalize by Wednesday. While the agreement might seem modest, it marks a seismic shift in US trade policy. For decades, the US championed the World Trade Organization's WTO rules-based system. Now, Trump's unilateral approach, ignoring WTO norms, has upended that legacy. As a senior European Commission official, speaking anonymously, put it, this strategy is economic madness that harms not just the US and EU but global supply chains. But here's the twist, Trump's team isn't backing down. He's doubled down on tariffs, even as analysts warn of long-term economic fallout. The clock is ticking. Trump announced on Sunday that he expects to finalize his tariff plans by Wednesday, with new levies taking effect on August 1st. Yet tangible progress remains scarce. Since April, when Trump launched his 90-day trade negotiation blitz, only 2 deals, Vietnam and the UK, have materialized. These agreements hint at a new US trade strategy, a baseline 10% tariff on all imports, with higher rates for specific sectors and countries. This approach directly challenges the WTO's most favored nation principle, which required equal tariff rates for all trading partners. Now, identical goods from the UK, Vietnam, and China could face tariffs ranging from 10% to over 50%, creating chaos for global manufacturers. We are in a new era of transactional trade, says Edward Alden of the Council on Foreign Relations. The US is rewriting the rules, and no one knows the final chapter yet. But what does this mean for everyday consumers and businesses? Higher tariffs on electronics, clothing, and phones will likely push prices upward. While some US industries might gain access to foreign markets, these gains are offset by Trump's steel tariffs, which raise costs for American manufacturers. Analysts like Edward Gresser argue that these deals are inherently unstable, legally shaky, economically unproven, and lacking congressional approval. Congress hasn't even been in the room, Gresser notes. That's a recipe for uncertainty. The EU, meanwhile, is caught in a delicate balancing act. While some members, like Germany, push for a quick deal, others, like France, resist concessions. The EU's chief trade negotiator, Mauro Šefčovič, reported limited progress in recent talks with US officials, but a final agreement seems unlikely before the deadline. If Trump proceeds with tariffs, the EU has contingency plans to retaliate with its own levies on American products. The EU might even risk letting the clock run out, betting that Trump's popularity will wane before European voters face their next election in 2029. Trump's trade strategy clashes with European values in more ways than one. Where the US favors unilateral power plays, the EU seeks multilateral consensus. And while Trump accuses the EU of being a tool to screw the US, European leaders argue he's missing a chance to unite against China's aggressive trade practices. Beijing's recent rare earth material restrictions and surging electric vehicle exports have already strained European industries. Yet Trump's focus on tariffs, not collaboration, risks deepening global economic divides. The results of Trump's 90-day trade push? Underwhelming. Only a handful of nations have signed deals, and the agreements themselves are skeletal compared to past pacts like the U.S. Mexico-Canada agreement. The UK deal, for instance, is a mere 3-page fact sheet, lacking the detailed chapters on labor, environment, and digital trade that define previous negotiations. As European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen admits, a comprehensive deal by July 9 is impossible. Instead, negotiators aim for a principal agreement, a vague framework that leaves the real work for later. And what about the economic costs? Experts warn that new trade barriers could cost trillions in lost output and destabilize global markets. Yet Trump remains undeterred, prioritizing political symbolism over economic pragmatism. He wants to win, says William Reinsch, a former U.S. trade official. The content of the deal matters less than the headline. So where does this leave the world? With uncertainty. Will Trump's tariffs spark a trade war, or will the US and EU find a middle ground? What do you think? Is this strategy a bold move for American workers, or a reckless gamble that could backfire? Share your thoughts in the comments below. 2. US tariffs on Europe, impact on $2 trillion trade relationship. Imagine the world's largest economic partnership teetering on the edge of collapse, not from war or natural disaster, but from political brinkmanship. That's the reality as US-EU trade talks face unprecedented strain, with tariffs threatening to upend a $2 trillion relationship that touches everything from your morning coffee to cutting-edge tech. But here's where it gets controversial: both sides are digging in, even as experts warn the fallout could hit everyday consumers hardest. Let's break down why this clash matters, whether you're a business owner, a traveler, or just someone who enjoys a good glass of wine, / and / the stakes are sky high *, and when the EU and US trade, we're talking about mind-boggling numbers, $2 trillion exchanged annually in goods and services alone. To put that in perspective, that's enough to cover the entire GDP of Italy every 8 months. American crude oil, life-saving medicines, and Boeing jets meet European cars, luxury wines, and precision medical tools in a transatlantic marketplace that employs millions. But here's what most people miss: while the EU sells more physical goods, think $198 billion surplus, America dominates digital services like cloud storage and financial tech, giving the US a $59 billion counterbalance. It's not just about trade balances, it's about who sets the rules for the global economy, / and *, the tariff trap, pay now, gain later, *, and President Trump's team claims slapping 25% tariffs on European cars and 50% on steel/aluminum will revive American manufacturing. But economists roll their eyes: this isn't a magic fix. Take Mercedes-Benz. They built 35% of their US sold SUVs in Alabama, which softens the blow, for now. But CEO Ola Källenius already warns prices will jump significantly eventually. And it's not just cars. Campari Group's Simon Hunt admits Sky Vodka might get pricier unless rivals hike prices first, creating a bizarre game of tariff chess. Here's the twist: some companies, like LVMH's Bernard Arnault, say high tariffs might force them to relocate factories to America. Is this the rebirth of US industry, or just corporate musical chess? / and *, the VAT debate, fair tax or sneaky barrier, *, and Trump's team hates Europe's 17 to 27% value-added taxes, calling them anti-American. But economists counter: VAT hits local and foreign goods equally, making it neutral by design. The EU's stance? Not negotiating, these taxes are set by individual countries' laws, not Brussels bureaucrats. Holger Schmieding, a top analyst, puts it bluntly, Europe can't redesign its entire internal market just because Washington misunderstands how it works. So who's right? Should tax systems be part of trade deals, or does that open Pandora's box, /n/, what's the endgame, */n Brussels-based think tank Bruegel ran the numbers. If Trump imposes 25% tariffs, the US economy would shrink twice as much as Europe's, 0.7% versus 0.3% GDP loss. That's why both sides might settle for a shaky truce, a framework deal keeping 10% tariffs alive while negotiations drag on. Schmieding predicts Trump might claim victory by backing down on extreme threats, but warns the road could be rocky. Translation: expect more headlines about auto tariffs and wine taxes long after the deadline passes. /n/, your turn. Who loses most in this trade war? */n while billionaires like Arno H. bets by shifting factories, everyday shoppers face higher prices on everything from Parmigiano cheese to electric vehicles. Trump insists this is winning, but is it? We want to hear from you. Does protectionism protect jobs, or just create a world of expensive, lower-quality goods? And should the EU compromise more on regulations, or hold firm on principles? Drop your thoughts below. We're betting this one get heated. 3. Trump's tariffs deadline looms, what it means for US-EU trade relations. The deadline for President Trump's tariffs is fast approaching, and Europe is on high alert. As we stand on the brink of significant economic changes, the negotiations between the United States and the European Union are under intense scrutiny. With only a few days left before the tariffs are fully implemented, the stakes couldn't be higher. If the US and the EU do not finalize a trade agreement by July 9, the temporary 90-day pause on Trump's controversial reciprocal tariffs will come to an end. This could result in European goods entering the US facing tariffs as steep as 50%. In response, the EU has also held back on retaliatory tariffs aimed at a variety of American products, but these measures could be activated swiftly if an agreement is not reached. The trade relationship between the US and the EU is one of the most crucial globally, representing approximately 30% of all international goods trade, as reported by the European Council. Key commodities exchanged include pharmaceuticals, vehicles, and petroleum products, which are vital to both economies. In 2024, the trade volume between these two partners was estimated at around €1.68 trillion, about $1.98 trillion, encompassing both goods and services. While the EU enjoyed a goods surplus of €198 billion, it faced a services deficit of approximately €148 billion, resulting in an overall trade surplus of about €50 billion for the bloc. Trump has consistently criticized the trade dynamics with the EU, labeling them as inequitable and accusing European nations of exploiting the US market. Recently, he announced that he had dispatched 12 letters containing a take it or leave it tariff proposal, although it remains unclear if the EU was among the recipients. Negotiations have been sluggish and fraught with challenges. Sources indicate that the EU's best chance may lie in securing a basic political agreement that lacks extensive details. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has echoed this sentiment, stating that while they aim for a principal agreement, a comprehensive deal is unlikely during the current reprieve. Von der Leyen emphasized that if negotiations fail, all options are on the table, indicating a readiness to respond decisively. Meanwhile, European Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič described his recent meetings in Washington, D.C. as productive, reaffirming the EU's commitment to achieving a robust transatlantic trade agreement. However, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent expressed skepticism about the likelihood of reaching a deal before the looming deadline, suggesting that the situation remains fluid. Experts have voiced doubts regarding the feasibility of a comprehensive agreement in the near term. Anthony Gardner, a former U.S. ambassador to the EU, noted that the absence of a detailed deal was not surprising, as such agreements can be extensive and complex. He suggested that a simpler framework, akin to the one established between the US and the UK, might be more achievable. Carsten Nickel, managing director at Teneo, posited that a broad agreement could be the best possible outcome for the EU, allowing for further discussions and potentially accepting a 10% baseline tariff from the US. However, he cautioned that uncertainty would persist, as any agreement could be subject to renegotiation or changes in US policy. In conclusion, while the EU may hold off on retaliatory measures unless full tariffs are imposed, the path forward remains precarious. Will the EU and the US find common ground, or are we heading toward a trade standoff? This situation invites a deeper discussion. What do you think will happen if no agreement is reached? Share your thoughts in the comments.